Husband humiliated his fat wife by smashing cake on her face, and not one person in that room moved. Not one. The frosting slid down Zara Washington's jaw in slow, thick ribbons, catching the candlelight of a rooftop terrace in Buckhead, Atlanta, that she had dreamed about for months. 40 guests sat frozen in their seats. The jazz trio near the bar had stopped mid-note. A champagne flute teetered on the edge of a table and fell, the sound of it shattering against the stone floor, the only thing loud enough to cut through the silence. Before we move on, tell me in the comments which state you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. Tomorrow's episode may touch a story that is still unfolding. Marcus Holt stood with his hands still pressed into what remained of the three-tier ivory cake, frosting smeared across his palms, a smile pulling at the corner of his mouth like he had just told a joke and was waiting for the room to catch up. He did not wipe his hands. He did not look at Zara. He turned, reached behind the centerpiece, and produced a single cupcake with one small candle burning at its center. Then he turned toward the woman in the red dress standing near the bar. Her name was Desire Fontaine. She had been Zara's maid of honor. She stepped forward on her heels with her chin lifted and her shoulders squared, moving through the stunned crowd the way a woman moves when she believes the room now belongs to her. Marcus kissed her, slow, deliberate, the kind of kiss performed for an audience. Then he pressed the cupcake into her hands and said it clearly enough for every person on that rooftop to hear. "Make a wish, baby. You are the only one worth celebrating tonight." Desire smiled. She closed her eyes, drew a breath, and blew out the candle. Then she turned toward Zara, frosting still dripping from Zara's collarbone, and said with a lightness that made it worse, "Happy birthday to me." The room turned. Every face rotated toward Zara Washington, the woman standing at the center of her own birthday party with cake on her face and betrayal on every side. They were waiting for collapse. They expected a scream, a shattered glass, a woman coming apart at the seams in front of everyone who loved her. Zara's mother, Claudette, sat near the front table in a pressed plum dress, her hands gripping the armrests. She began to rise. Her lips were already forming something sharp and irreversible. Zara's hand came up, one palm flat, calm. Claudette sat back down. Zara reached for the white linen napkin beside the ruined cake. She pressed it to her cheek, then her chin, then the edge of her jaw slowly with the unhurried precision of a woman who had somewhere important to be and was not in any rush to get there. She did not look at Marcus. She did not look at Desire. She looked up directly into the security camera mounted above the bar and held its lens for 3 full seconds. Then she turned to Marcus and spoke in a voice so level it made the silence louder. "Are you done?" He laughed, the kind of laugh that does not know it is the last one a man ever gets to mean. "Yeah, I am done with you." Zara reached down and unclasped the gold anklet from her wrist, the one her grandmother had pressed into her hands the morning she passed her licensing exam. She placed it on the table beside the shattered plate, not thrown, not dropped, placed, like something returned to the earth it always belonged to. Nobody in that room understood what they were watching, not yet. But they would. Zara Washington was not the kind of woman a room forgot. She was the kind of woman a room underestimated, and that was a distinction she had spent 34 years learning to use. She grew up in southwest Atlanta, in a narrow house on Avon Avenue where the summers were long and the expectations were longer, raised by a woman named Claudette who ironed her church clothes on Saturday nights and told her daughter every single morning before school, "Your mind is the one thing nobody can repossess." Zara believed her. She had no other option. There was no inheritance waiting, no family name that opened doors. There was only the work. She was not small. She had never been small. By the time she was in middle school, she understood that the world had already decided what her body meant before she opened her mouth. She learned early to open it anyway, louder and clearer and more precisely than anyone expected. That became her power, not despite the way she looked, because of what she refused to let it cost her. She put herself through Georgia State on academic scholarship, working weekend shifts at a hotel front desk on Peachtree Street while her classmates slept. She graduated near the top of her cohort in her paralegal certification program, then spent 3 years inside a mid-size compliance firm in Midtown Atlanta, learning every room she was not supposed to be in. By 31, she had launched her own consultancy from a kitchen table with a second-hand printer and a mug that read billable hours only. Small businesses, contract reviews, compliance frameworks for firms that needed someone sharp and dependable and could not yet afford a full legal department. She built it client by client, referral by referral, reputation by reputation. The consultancy was not glamorous. It was solid. It was hers. The gold anklet had been on her wrist since the morning Claudette clasped it there, cool and thin against her skin, after Zara passed her exam on the first attempt. "Wear this," Claudette had told her, "so you remember who built you." Zara had never taken it off. Not for a dinner, not for a wedding, not for a man. It went everywhere with her. It meant everything it was supposed to mean. She was a self-made woman in a city that respected nothing more than exactly that. She did not need to be rescued. She did not need to be managed. She needed to be seen clearly, and for years she believed Marcus Holt was the one man in Atlanta capable of doing that. She was wrong, but being wrong was not the same as being weak, and Zara Washington had never once confused the two. They met at a cookout on Cascade Road on a Saturday afternoon in late July, the kind of afternoon in Atlanta where the heat presses down from above and rises up from the concrete simultaneously, and everyone stands close to the grill anyway because the smell of charcoal is worth it. Zara was near the cooler arguing with her cousin about whether peach cobbler was superior to banana pudding when a man she had never seen reached past her for a water bottle and said, without looking up, "Cobbler." It is not a conversation. That was Marcus Holt, 6 feet and 2 inches, clean edge, the kind of man who stood inside a crowd but somehow seemed slightly apart from it, like the room had been arranged around him without his asking. He was 36, recently relocated from Charlotte, climbing fast in commercial real estate development along the Beltline corridor. He shook hands with people whose names were printed on buildings. He wore his clothes like the meeting had not ended yet, even though it was a Saturday and there was no meeting. He called Zara the next day, then the day after. He was consistent in a way that felt like intention rather than routine. He remembered small things, the name of her first client, the intersection near her office where construction had been frustrating her commute, the way she took her coffee when they finally met for it at a place in Virginia Highland where he had already told the server her order before she sat down. They were married 11 months later at a vineyard in Dalonga, North Georgia. White chairs on a hillside, September light coming in soft and golden the way it does before a season turns. Desire Fontaine stood beside Zara at the altar. They had been friends since Howard University, two women from Atlanta who found each other in a dorm room the size of a storage closet and decided that was enough space to build a friendship that would last everything. Desire gave a toast at the reception that made Claudette press a napkin to her eyes. She clasped the gold anklet onto Zara's wrist during the speeches and said, "Carry this into your new life, so you never forget where you started." The first 2 years with Marcus were attentive and easy. He brought flowers. He asked about her clients by name. He stood behind her at the kitchen desk and pressed his thumbs into the tight muscles along her shoulders until she exhaled. They talked about expanding the consultancy. They talked about children. They talked about the future as though it belonged to both of them equally. Then year 3 arrived and changed the temperature of everything without announcing itself. The late nights started. The cologne changed, sharper, more considered, not something a man selects alone. A second phone appeared on the nightstand. "For work," he said, already looking away. The comments began at dinner, casual and precisely aimed. "You used to try, Zara. Is that what you are wearing? You used to be the kind of woman who surprised people." He said these things lightly, the way someone drops a match without watching where the wind is going. The second phone was on the bathroom counter, unlocked, when Zara found it. Marcus was in the shower. The water was running at full pressure, steam curling out beneath the glass door and gathering against the mirror in a soft gray film. He was humming something off-key. Zara picked up the phone the way a person picks up a document they have already read in their mind 100 times before seeing it in print. Not with trembling, not with surprise, with confirmation. She scrolled without rushing. Months of messages between Marcus and Desire, not the kind of messages that suggested weakness or impulse. These were strategic. Desire had been coaching Marcus on language, on timing, on how to make a woman doubt the validity of her own perception, how to create distance slowly enough that she mistakes isolation for her own choice. One message from Desire read, "She trusts me more than anyone in her life. That is your foundation. Keep her anchored to me and she will never see you with clear eyes." Another from Marcus, sent on a Tuesday evening while Zara had been 3 feet away watching television. "I am planning the birthday party for next month. 40 people, rooftop, perfect setting. After that night she will have nothing left to stand on." Desire had responded with a single line, "Make sure the cake is tall enough to make an impression." Zara's thumb stopped. She read that exchange again, then a third time. Her jaw tightened. Her breathing slowed into something measured and deliberate, the kind of breathing that requires conscious maintenance. Her hands did not shake, not once. She placed the phone back on the counter in the precise position she had found it, screen facing upward, angled slightly left, and walked to the kitchen. She filled a glass of water at the tap, drank it standing at the sink, one hand braced against the counter edge. She set the glass down and watched the faucet drip. 1, 2, 3. She did not cry. She did not sit down. She did not call anyone. She opened her laptop at the kitchen desk, created a new folder, and labeled it with a single piece of information. The date of her 35th birthday party, 4 weeks away. Then she closed the laptop, returned to bed, and lay in the dark beside a man who was already sleeping with his back turned, his breathing deep and unbothered, completely unaware that the woman beside him had just stopped grieving and started building. The gold anklet was cool against her wrist in the dark. She pressed her thumb across it once, slowly, bead by bead. She thought about what Desire had said at the wedding. Carry this into your new life. She thought about the message on that phone. She trusts me more than anyone. She thought about how long she had been wearing something that was never actually meant to protect her. Zara moved through the house the following week like a woman who had heard nothing and changed nothing. She kissed Marcus at the door each morning. She answered Desire's texts with warmth, punctuation, the easy shorthand of two women who had known each other long enough to communicate in fragments. She asked Marcus about his day at dinner and listened to his answers with her chin resting on her hand and her expression soft and interested. Underneath, the machinery had already shifted direction. She reached out to Camille Ackhafer on a Wednesday. They had studied together during Zara's certification program at Georgia State, two women at the back of the same contract seminar who both noticed the footnotes everyone else skipped. Camille was now a compliance specialist working out of a firm near Emory. They met at a coffee shop on North Decatur Road, a place quiet enough to have a real conversation. Zara did not give her everything, she gave her enough. If an asset transfer moves from a joint investment account into a private account registered to a name not on the marriage, Zara said, what is the cleanest documentation path before a filing? Camille looked at her for a long moment. Her coffee sat untouched. How much time do you have? 4 weeks. Camille nodded. That is enough. I know exactly who you should call. 2 days later, Zara drove to the Skyline Terrace in Buckhead, the rooftop venue where her birthday party was already booked and paid for, the one Desire had selected and insisted upon. The one Marcus had confirmed without asking Zara for her preference. She told Marcus she was going to the pharmacy. Instead, she parked in the underground garage, took the elevator to the rooftop level, and sat across from the venue manager in his corner office for 11 minutes. The conversation was quiet. She asked one specific question about the security camera mounted above the bar and whether its live feed could be routed to the projection screen behind the stage area during an event. The manager confirmed it was possible. She asked if earlier footage from the same evening could be queued and played back through that same screen on request. He said that was even simpler. She asked how much notice he would need. He said 10 minutes was sufficient. She paid a separate service fee in cash, shook his hand, and walked out through the lobby the same way she had entered. Even pace, unreadable expression, heels on marble making the same steady sound in each direction. That night she sat beside Marcus on the couch while he watched highlights on his phone. She turned the gold anklet on her wrist once, slowly, the way a person turns a page they have already memorized. She thought about what was coming. She thought about Desire picking the venue, choosing the rooftop, selecting the camera wall above the bar without knowing that the same camera would become the instrument of her exposure. Some rooms are chosen for you by people who believe they control what happens inside them. Zara had simply learned to change who was running the controls. The transfer that stopped everything was dated 3 days after their last anniversary dinner. $140,000, moved from the joint investment account Marcus and Zara had built together over 4 years of combined income, routed into a private account, registered to an address in East Point that Zara had never visited but recognized immediately as the apartment complex where Desire had moved the previous spring. Marcus's signature was on the authorization form. Desire's name was on the account. The notarization stamp was from a Buckhead branch of a bank 2 blocks from the jewelry store where Marcus had purchased. On the same joint credit card, a gold necklace for a woman who was not his wife. Zara documented everything twice. She had been using a cloud mirroring method Camille walked her through, backing up the contents of Marcus's second phone each night to an encrypted external drive during the 40 minutes after his breathing steadied and before midnight. Text threads, hotel confirmations from Charleston and from a resort outside Savannah, wire transfer records, a photograph of the authorization form taken at a slight angle to catch the notary stamp clearly. She saved each file with a date and a label. She backed the drive to a second location outside the house. She did this without urgency and without error. Renee Caldwell operated out of a glass office on Peachtree Street in Buckhead with a view of the city and a professional reputation that made opposing counsel begin preparing settlement language before the first hearing. Camille had given Zara her name without hesitation. She described Renee in one sentence. She does not lose on the details. They met on a Thursday morning. Zara placed the encrypted drive and a printed summary of the financial records on the desk between them. Renee reviewed each page in silence, her expression consistent and unreadable throughout, the way a surgeon looks at imaging results before speaking. She reached the last page, set it down, and looked up. "You have more than enough. When do you want to file?" "After the party." Renee did not blink. She closed the folder and said, "Good. That gives us time to prepare the full asset disclosure without rushing anything." They shook hands. Zara stood and straightened her jacket and walked out into the Peachtree Street afternoon, the sun coming down hard and gold the way it does in Atlanta in late summer when the air has weight, and the city hums with its own momentum. She stood on the sidewalk for a moment, not because she was uncertain, because she understood that the next chapter had just been signed and sealed, and she wanted to feel the full weight of that before she went back to the life she was still performing. She drove home, she made dinner, she set the table for two. The night of the party arrived the way a verdict arrives. Quietly, finally, with the full weight of everything that had been building behind it. The Skyline Terrace in Buckhead had been transformed the way only Desire Fonte knew how to transform a room. Fairy lights strung in careful loops along the iron railing, cream candles at every table. A three-tier ivory cake with gold leaf detailing sitting at the center table like something that had been placed there with ceremony. A jazz trio warmed up near the bar, running through the opening measures of something smooth and unhurried. The Atlanta skyline blinked through the summer haze beyond the railing, every light in the distance, small and clear and indifferent to what was about to happen below it. Guests arrived in their finest. Laughter came easily, the kind of easy laughter that belongs to people who do not yet know they are about to witness something they will describe for years. Zara arrived before anyone else. She wore a deep burgundy dress that did not ask for attention but accumulated it anyway. Her hair was pulled back at the nape. The gold anklet caught the candlelight every time her wrist moved. Her makeup was precise and minimal, just enough. Her posture was the posture of a woman who had already won something and was simply waiting for the room to catch up. She greeted every guest by their first name. She hugged Claudette at the door and whispered something into her ear that made her mother close her eyes briefly, nod once, and grip her daughter's forearm with both hands before releasing it. Marcus arrived 40 minutes after the start time. He walked in with Desire beside him, close enough to signal something, far enough apart to deny it if pressed. He wore a charcoal suit with no tie, the top button of his shirt undone. Desire wore red. He introduced her to a group near the entrance as a family friend. A woman near the dessert table leaned toward the man beside her and said quietly, was she not the maid of honor at the wedding? The man said he thought so. Zara greeted Desire with a full embrace. She held it a half-second past comfortable and then leaned in close and said softly, "I am so glad you are here tonight." Desire's spine straightened. The smile she had been wearing tightened at its edges. She pulled back, composed herself, and said she would not have missed it. But something in Zara's voice had gone in under her skin like a splinter too small to locate and too persistent to ignore. She walked to the bar and ordered something cold. Marcus drank too much too fast. He laughed too loudly at his own observations. He checked his phone beneath the table 3 separate times with the body language of a man rehearsing rather than relaxing. He was not celebrating. He was preparing. He had practiced this performance and was building himself up to deliver it. Halfway through the evening, from across the crowded terrace, Marcus looked up and found Zara's eyes. She was standing directly beneath the security camera above the bar, holding a glass of wine she had not touched. She was not looking at him with pain, not with anger, not with the soft, wounded expression he had learned to expect when he cut her with his words at dinner. She was watching him the way a person watches a timer counting down to 0, like she already knew the final number. Marcus looked away. His hand was not steady when he reached for his glass. Marcus stood and cleared his throat, and the room settled into the kind of quiet that follows a natural signal, the instinctive hush of 40 people recognizing that someone with authority is about to speak. He loosened his collar. He lifted his glass. He let the first words come out warm, the way he had practiced them, shaped around a softness designed to make what followed land harder. "Zara," he said, "my wife, my partner." A few guests smiled. Someone near the second table said, all quietly. Then the warmth drained from his voice, the way heat leaves a room when a window opens in winter. The shift was deliberate. He had rehearsed it. He said he had been thinking about honesty, real honesty, the kind that clears the air and stops pretending. He set his glass down. He said he was tired of performing a version of his life that no longer reflected what he felt, tired of watching a woman become someone comfortable and predictable. He paused. He let his gaze move over Zara from her shoulders to the table in front of her, slowly, publicly, with the clinical detachment of a man appraising an object he has decided to return. Boring, he said. That was the word he chose. He let it sit in the air like something thrown from a height. Nobody moved. Claudette's hands pressed flat against the tablecloth. The jazz trio had already stopped playing. A woman near the back of the terrace lowered her phone to her lap. Marcus gripped the top tier of the ivory cake with both hands and pressed it into Zara's face with enough force that the plate cracked against the table edge. Frosting covered her lashes, her chin, the neckline of her dress. Gold fondant pressed into her collarbone. A glass at the corner of the table tipped and shattered on the stone floor. 40 people inhaled in the same second. He did not wipe his hands. He reached behind the centerpiece and produced a cupcake with one candle burning. He turned to Desire. She stepped forward in her red dress, heels precise on the stone, chin lifted, and Marcus kissed her in front of everyone. Then he held out the cupcake and said what he had rehearsed. Desire closed her eyes, smiled, and blew out the candle. Then she turned to Zara and said it. Happy birthday to me. The room turned to Zara. She reached for the linen napkin. She pressed it to her cheek, then her chin, then the edge of her jaw, slowly, without urgency, without trembling, without the collapse everyone was bracing to witness. She did not look at Marcus. She did not look at Desire. She raised her eyes to the security camera above the bar and held its lens for 3 full seconds. Then she looked at Marcus and said it quietly, "Are you done?" He laughed. "Yes," he said, "I am done with you." Zara unclasped the gold anklet from her wrist and placed it gently on the table beside the ruined cake. Then she straightened, looked at no one in particular, and spoke in a voice that filled the terrace without being raised. "You wanted a show tonight, Marcus, so I made sure everyone gets to see it." She turned to the venue manager standing near the hallway entrance. He nodded once. The projection screen behind the jazz trio flickered on. The screen came alive with blue light, and then with an image so clear and so specific that the room took a full 3 seconds to understand what it was seeing. Security camera footage, time-stamped from 2 hours before the party began, captured by the camera mounted above the bar, the same camera Zara had stood beneath all evening, the same camera she had arranged with the venue manager on a quiet Tuesday afternoon while Marcus believed she was at the pharmacy. The footage showed Marcus and Desire entering the Skyline Terrace through the service entrance on the east side of the building, his hand resting at the small of her back, her head tilted briefly against his shoulder as they walked. They stopped in the corridor near the kitchen. The kiss lasted long enough to remove any possible ambiguity about what this was or how long it had been happening. The footage continued. Marcus and Desire at the center table, standing over the ivory cake. He was demonstrating the motion with his hands, pressing them downward, mimicking the angle, adjusting the force. Desire stood with her arms crossed and a wide smile on her face. Then her voice came through the speakers, small but absolutely clear, reaching every corner of that rooftop terrace without distortion. "She is going to completely lose herself. I cannot wait to see it." The room did not gasp. It moved past gasping into something heavier and more permanent. 40 people sat inside a silence so dense it pressed against the ceiling and the floor simultaneously. Someone placed a glass onto the table, and the sound traveled across the entire terrace like a stone released into still water. A woman near the back raised both hands to cover her mouth. Claudette sat with her hands folded in her lap, watching her daughter, not the screen. Daniel's composure came apart all at once, not gradually, like a structure whose central support had been removed. His mouth opened. Nothing arrived. His eyes moved from the screen to Zara to the screen again, repeating the motion of a man searching every wall for a door that does not exist. Zara reached into her clutch and removed a single printed page. She held it up and read one line. Desire's message, word for word, in the same tone she would use to read a legal document into a record. "She trusts me more than anyone in her life. That is your advantage." She let it sit in the air for 15 full seconds. Nobody moved. Nobody breathed at full capacity. Desire's face had emptied of color from the forehead down. She took one step backward. The woman seated beside her shifted her chair, not dramatically, not with announcement, just enough to establish a small and irrevocable distance between them. A gesture that said, "I am no longer associated with what is standing next to me." Zara turned to face Desire directly. Her voice did not rise. It did not need to. "You clasped this onto my wrist at my wedding. You called me your sister. You told me to carry it into my new life. And from that same day, you were already planning how to take that life apart. She picked up the gold anklet from the table, held it out. The light caught it, swaying gently between her fingers. Then she set it down on the table directly in front of Desire's chair. The small sound it made against the wood carried across the silent room like a period placed at the end of the only sentence that mattered. Desire did not reach for it. Her arms remained at her sides as though she had forgotten their function. Then Zara turned toward Marcus's business partner, Damon, who was standing near the bar with his arms crossed and his jaw set. Damon, she said, pull up the joint investment account. He moved $140,000 into a private account registered to her address last month. She did not gesture toward Desire. She did not need to. Damon was already reaching for his phone. Marcus stepped forward. His hands were open at his sides, palms upward. Zara, you do not understand what you are looking at. I understand everything, Zara said. She picked up her clutch. She walked to her mother. Claudette rose halfway and Zara leaned down and kissed her on the forehead. Claudette reached up and touched her daughter's face, her fingers gentle against the last faint trace of frosting still visible near Zara's temple. She nodded once. The kind of nod that carries every word a mother has ever wanted to say and knows, in this moment, do not need to be spoken. Zara walked toward the elevator. Her heels struck the stone floor in a rhythm that did not vary and did not hurry. She did not look at Marcus. She did not look at the screen still glowing with the footage of two people who had believed they were untouchable. She did not look at Desire, standing motionless beside an anklet that no longer meant what it once had. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside. The doors closed. The jazz trio looked at one another across their instruments. The saxophone player lifted his horn after what felt like an extended silence and played one low, sustained note into the night air above the Atlanta skyline. Then he stopped. Even the music could not find what came after that. By the following morning, the story was already moving faster than either Marcus or Desire could contain it. 3 guests had posted before leaving the parking garage. One of them had recorded the projection screen on a phone, shaky but clear enough. By noon, Marcus Holt's name was circulating in group chats he had never been part of, conversations that began with "Did you hear what happened at the Skyline Terrace?" and ended with "I always knew something about that man was constructed rather than real." Damon moved on Monday. He froze the firm's operating accounts before 9 in the morning and retained a forensic accountant by the afternoon. The $140,000 transfer was flagged inside the first hour of review. Marcus's access to the company credit line was suspended without a phone call. Damon communicated the entire partnership review through a single paragraph email copied to the firm's attorney. The subject line read, "Partnership status under immediate review." Marcus arrived at the office on Tuesday with his briefcase and his coffee and the posture of a man who still believed the room reorganized itself around him by default. The receptionist kept her eyes on her screen. Damon's office door was closed. Through the glass, Marcus could see 2 men in suits he did not recognize sitting across from Damon with financial documents open between them, pages with highlighted figures, columns that did not add up in his favor. He stood in the hallway for 90 seconds. 3 colleagues passed him without acknowledgement. He turned around, walked back to the elevator, and sat in his car in the underground garage for 20 minutes with the engine off, staring at the concrete wall directly in front of him. Desire's collapse came from a different direction. Her sister called Tuesday morning, then her cousin, then a woman from college. None of them called to offer comfort. They called to confirm what they were unable to fully accept. Her sister sent a text message containing 5 words. "You were her maid of honor." Desire read it 3 times and placed the phone face down on the counter. On Wednesday night, Marcus called Desire. He told her it was her fault. She told him he was the one who smashed a cake into his wife's face on a recorded camera in front of 40 witnesses. He ended the call. She called back twice. He blocked her number. Desire sat in the apartment whose lease was in her name, whose furniture had been purchased on a credit card balance she could not clear, wearing a gold necklace that now appeared as an exhibit in a financial disclosure document filed in Fulton County Superior Court. The divorce filing landed Friday morning. Renee Caldwell had been ready for days. Evidence of sustained infidelity, evidence of financial fraud, evidence of premeditated asset concealment. The filing requested full division of marital assets, sole ownership of Zara's legal consultancy, and complete restitution for the misappropriated investment funds. Marcus's attorney called Renee by afternoon and strongly recommended his client settle. Marcus did not listen. He stalled, argued, retained a second attorney who delivered the same assessment as the first. The court ruled in Zara's favor on every contested point 3 months later. The house, the accounts, the consultancy, all of it returned to the woman who had built most of it before he arrived. 6 months after the night of the party, Zara Washington sat on the balcony of a midtown Atlanta apartment she had selected, signed for, and furnished herself. It was smaller than the house. It was warmer. It was hers in a way nothing had been in years. Saturday morning, late summer light coming in at a low angle that made everything in the apartment look like it had been lit deliberately. A cup of coffee on the railing. A stack of finalized legal documents on the small table beside her, every page signed, every matter settled. The consultancy had expanded. 2 new associates. A real office suite on West Peachtree with her name on the door in letters she had chosen herself. On the kitchen counter behind her sat a small velvet box. Inside it, a new gold anklet. Not the one her grandmother had given her, that one had served its purpose and been returned. This one she had purchased for herself 3 weeks after the final court ruling, with no occasion to mark, no date to commemorate. She simply wanted something on her wrist that meant exactly and only what she had decided it meant. She clasped it on, held her arm up in the morning light. The gold caught the sun and threw a thin line of brightness across the kitchen wall. She turned her wrist slowly and watched it travel. Across the city, Marcus sat in a month-to-month studio with a couch that did not fit the room and a moving box in the corner with the tape coming loose at the edges. He was scrolling when a photograph appeared in his feed. Someone had tagged Zara at a rooftop gathering in Midtown. She was mid-laugh, her head tilted back, surrounded by people who were glad to be near her. On her wrist, something caught the light, something gold. He looked at the photograph for a long time. Then he placed the phone face down on the cushion beside him and looked out the window at the Atlanta skyline, the same skyline he used to believe had been arranged specifically for him. Zara stepped inside from the balcony and put on music, something slow with a brass line that filled the apartment the way good light fills a room with no curtains. She moved through her kitchen barefoot, making breakfast, the gold catching the sun each time her arm passed through the window light. She did not think about the party. She did not think about the cake or the frosting or the man who had believed humiliation was the same thing as power. She did not think about desire or the anklet that was sitting in a drawer somewhere, gathering the particular dust that collects on things that were never what they claimed to be. She thought about the eggs she was making. She thought about the 2 new clients she was meeting Monday morning. She thought about how the light came into this apartment at an angle she had never experienced before, like it had been waiting for her to finally stand in the exact right place. Some people spend the whole of their lives waiting for someone else to confirm what they are worth. Zara Washington stopped waiting. She looked at herself with clear eyes, decided what needed to be built, and built it with her own hands. Not out of bitterness, not out of the need to be witnessed, out of the quiet and unshakable knowledge that she had always been enough. She had simply been standing inside someone else's definition of her for too long to see her own. The gold caught the light again as she moved. She did not look back. If you enjoyed this story, like this video, and leave a comment telling me what you thought. And if you're not already subscribed to the channel, please subscribe and hit the notification bell to get alerts for new stories like this one. Thanks for watching.